would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Wyla, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. We have got a great show for you today. We're going to have an interview with Tyler Sheff, investor, entrepreneur, real estate professional from the state of Florida, Tampa, Florida, to be more specific. So stay tuned for that. If you'd like to get in touch with me, best way to do that is through the website at therebelbroker.com. Simply click the contact links in the menu bar. Send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. Plus, if while you're there, you're feeling so inclined, click on the big red button at the tippy top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. From there, you'll be able to give your email address. You'll be asked for that twice. Make sure to use the same email address both times you're asked. Then answer the handful of demographic-style questions, and you are done. And you've supported the show, but you have also managed to put yourself into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, this is something we do at the beginning of every month. We've given out $550 so far. I've kind of lost count, but you could get yourself on that list. So who knows? You might just win the next drawing for that $50 Amazon gift card. Finally, if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground, you can text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222 and get yourself access to exclusive content that only members of the Rebel Underground can access. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in to our Friday interview right here on Real Estate Realities. All right, everyone, welcome to a interview edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. We've got a great guest today, Tyler Sheff, entrepreneur, real estate agent. He is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Cashflow Guys, which you can find at cashflowguys.com. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome, Tyler, to the show, and maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview of who you are and what you do.
Well, as you said there, my name is Tyler Sheff, and I am, in fact, the owner of CashflowGuys.com. Besides being I am a licensed real estate agent about 17 years now, and I am also a buy and hold investor, which means I'm not the get-rich-quick flipper guy anymore. I was that guy many, many years ago. And now I invest for long-term hold, and I help other people do the very same thing.
Cool. Now, there's also something else that you do. I know you have a philanthropic side. Do you want to kind of share with folks that part of what you do?
We do. We're very focused on our community, number one. We believe that everybody deserves clean, safe, affordable housing. So we host events locally in the Tampa Bay area to teach people, number one, how to invest in real estate safely, but more importantly, we spend a great deal of time educating kids in the community, teenagers, younger kids, and things like that. So reaching out, a little bit of community outreach to kind of get them on the right track, because what we've realized, Robert, is that they're not getting this in school.
Yeah.
The rich dad, poor dad methodology, they're not picking this up in school. They're not even teaching them how to balance a checkbook. So we spend a great deal of time creating content and putting stuff out there to help educate kids and get them started in the right direction with financial freedom. Yeah,
and you hit on, I think, a really critical point. This is something I actually brought up with my audience last week in terms of I was sort of bouncing around the idea of starting a nonprofit to help make people more financially aware, more financially responsible, instead of sort of just by the stroke of a pen granting them a increased credit score. Why not give them the tools necessary to have a robust credit score? Because that equals a responsible person, right? So knowledge is the thing. It's not that we should be reducing standards. It's that folks need to be educated about it. And someone like you who's getting them right at the earliest point where, their minds are as curious really as they're ever going to be in their life in a lot of ways. And introducing that stuff is fantastic. I love the idea that you're doing that for young people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, it started with my girls, and sometimes it was like talking to the wall, trying to get them to get them on board.
So, yeah. So I'm also a licensed real estate person. I'm a real estate broker in California. Been doing it for 25 plus years. One of my things was all about my sons. So I named the company White Lawn Sons. everyone asks me, am I one of the sons? No, none of my sons are in the business. In fact, when I first started it by that name, they were, I think, 2 years old and 3 years old at the time. So that there was no desire for me to push them into that mold. But it's the whole idea of how important it is to keep mindful the things that are important to you and when you do business. So whenever I'm out there doing things, one of the main motivators is I have my kids on my mind, right? And I want to make them knowledgeable in ways that so many people aren't. So and the other thing I think that's important is some of the folks I've interviewed who have, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess if you're a fan of movies with Tom Cruise in them, it's sort of that show me the money Quan thing. Folks who have achieved not only they've got the knowledge to be successful, but they have a strong drive to then not hoard that knowledge and share it with other people. And I love it when I get a chance to talk to someone like you who's not only talking it, but also walking it.
Well, Robert, one of my mentors taught me is that, first of all, you have to educate to dominate. If you want to dominate a marketplace, you have to educate the marketplace. What better client would you possibly have, or customer, depending on how you look at it, than an educated one?
Yeah.
It makes our job as brokers much, much easier, first of all. More importantly, if I truly believe, and this may sound cliche, but it's reality, if you give to the marketplace, I truly believe that the marketplace will return to you.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I unfortunately, I think there are so many examples where the ignorance of the consumer or the person that we're supposed to be representing, that we supposedly have this fiduciary relationship with, the ignorance is what so many people count on in order to achieve their goals without realizing that doesn't go unnoticed, right?
No,
you're never going to get a referral from someone who later realizes you didn't do what you should have done. But if you go out there and you do as you suggest and you educate them and you make them aware of all of these potential pitfalls, and you've been the professional that helps not only call it out, but then you've brought the plank to drop over that pit so that they don't have to step in it, that's the value that you bring, right? So, and I'm assuming this is also probably a big part of what you're passing on in terms of folks that you're mentoring, not just kids, but also you handle adults as well. And I'm sure you're giving them the benefit of that kind of not only just good business, but also the good ethics that go along with it.
Well, and I'm glad you touched on ethics, because I can't tell you how I wish that was discussed more in business. It's not in this day and age. It's kind of left to the wayside. It's considered, I was told recently, it was considered old-fashioned. I said, old-fashioned? Ethics, old-fashioned? It's kind of a core belief. And if it's not, you should really reconsider why you're in the business in the first place. But
it's a creepy trend, isn't it? When was it that like Harvard Business School stopped actually having a business ethics class? I'm not sure when it was, but it was in the early 90s or something. But it's a terrible trend, and understanding the part that you play overall as a business, I think, is huge. And we could continue on to preach to each other as the choirs on how important ethics is. But let's sort of jump in a little bit. You're in the Tampa marketplace. Before we started recording, I mentioned to you that Home Union gave Tampa a thumbs up in terms of making it the 12th best place to invest. Now, what's great is this fits in perfectly with what listeners have heard over the last few days, because we actually went over this list and shared it, because there's so many different places in the country where folks who are in more challenging places. Now, I'm in Silicon Valley, so San Jose, where the average home price is just up near $1 million, just crazy, crazy prices. And also, coincidentally, none of these places end up showing up on any of these great return on investment lists, because there isn't a great return on investment. What you're banking on is that appreciation. But Tampa scored a 5.7% annualized total return on this list with they also had a school rating of 78.6. But what do you think it is, or what in your experience have been some of the things that make Tampa such an attractive or such a successful, attractive, forget that, just the success in terms of being ranked so highly in terms of return on investment?
Well, number one, you can't argue with our weather.
Yeah.
We've got the best weather in the country. I mean, California is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it never gets cold here in Florida. We do have our hurricanes, but generally they kind of slide on by and they smack Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, places like that. So knock on wood, I say that. I'm probably jinxing myself for this hurricane season, but We've got a lot of things to do and see down here, a lot of nature, a lot of diversity, a lot of international attention. We've got some of the most productive ports in the country are in Florida. If you think about it, you got Port of Tampa, Port of Jacksonville, Port of Miami, Port Everglades. Granted, as compared to other states in the country, they've got their ocean-going ports as well, but we've got the international airports. Florida invests a lot of money in its infrastructure. We don't have things like crumbling bridges and stuff like that. We don't have potholes, and we don't have all these things that add up. Add to that is we're America's #1 travel destination. People want to live here, and and more importantly, they want to come here. So it doesn't really matter what type of investment you're in. And the one thing people forget is we took a bath in the housing crisis.
Yeah.
So 2007, 2008. We were hit harder in Florida than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
I believe that it was the numbers were staggering, but I believe it was 40% of the defaulted mortgages in the country were in Florida. I read this recently, the stat, which just blew my mind. If you think about it, we're not that big of a state. So,
well, you guys had a huge bottleneck, right? Because you're a judicial state for foreclosures.
Yes, absolutely. We are a judicial foreclosure state. So it's not uncommon. There's properties out there, phantom foreclosures they've been vacant for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. Still haven't hit the books. So that didn't help. Number one, we had lots of property and that sat vacant. So that created a shortage. Now they've started to release a lot of that inventory back into the marketplace. Foreclosures are right now at an all-time low. REO listings are at an all-time low. The REO brokers are feeling it, let me tell you, because there's just nothing out there right now, nothing for sale. So I hate to say this, but unfortunately, I think we're back in that cycle again where we're approaching the top.
Yeah.
We're back where we were. We're now in the state of Florida. They're back to no doc, stated income loans. That is back again.
Yeah. Now, what do you? So that is clearly on a show like this a recurring topic. In fact, I'm willing to bet I have some listeners who would love me to just shut up about bringing this particular topic up all the time. Right. The only ray of sunshine in the last week has been that Fannie Mae at least has said they're no longer going to back these 1% loans where lenders were pitching in the extra 2%, so that buyers were really only leveraged by 1% into the property. But that's not changing even until November. So we can still prime the crazy pump with some really weird loans. Now, have you heard of the 120% loan?
I have not, and I'm almost afraid to ask.
Yeah. So this is whenever I really want to scare my listeners, I always end the show with those. The 120% loan is a loan they're extending. And this is great. You'll love this because there's nothing like blending two really horrible debt profiles. They're saying if you want to buy this house, we'll give you a 120% loan if you fold your student loan into it.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's do that. That makes total sense.
Doesn't it? Because in the end, who cares where that extra boatload of debt came from? From the consumer standpoint, they simply now have a mortgage that's 120% of what they purchased. So they're A, immediately underwater, and B, if anything even vaguely weird happens, right? Let's say, I know a lot of folks have been talking about the automobile bubble, right? We've had a huge drop in automobile sales, and we had this huge run up in terms of manufacturing, and now there's all these defaults. If that's the thing that kicks off really bad debt profiles and people stop spending the same way they stopped spending last time, those folks that are really leveraged by these kinds of loans are going to stop paying those first.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
How long? I'm surprised it took this long for the education industry to figure out a way to get some sort of collateral for the education that they're spitting out. And of course, now they've mastered that. So congratulations.
Yeah. And what's scary, what's funny though, and I realize we're kind of we're riffing a little bit here, but there was some naive part of me that really thought that after what we went through from 2006 to 2009, that there would be no question that we would learn these lessons, and it might take 20, 30 years for us to get stupid again. It amazes me that it has taken under 10 for us to start doing these amazingly stupid things that are the exact same as before, just from the other side, right? So, and supposedly the solution to our problem is to lend more money, as opposed to build more houses. I mean, if we just backed regulations to what they were in 2005, you would see a gold rush of new construction. The regulations went through the roof in the run up to the downturn simply because all governments saw all this cash that they weren't getting a piece of, so they came up with regulations to get their fingers in more pockets. And of course, they're not backing off on those regulations, but now we have to contend with a market where it's harder. And so that's why we're not seeing a lot of construction now. And that's a truth for me. In my area, construction is down, and the construction that is up is all higher end stuff. What are you seeing in Tampa?
Everything is under construction. I'm beginning to think that there's not going to be any vacant land anywhere in the Tri-County area here in the Tampa Bay market. They're building multifamily.
Okay, so that was the next question. Are you seeing mostly multifamily or single family?
We're seeing both.
Okay.
In construction costs, you got to keep in mind, in the Tampa Bay market right now, construction costs are hovering about $135 a square foot.
Okay.
And they are building it, and they just won't stop. So there's a shortage of construction jobs. They can't keep good help on the construction jobs. There's more construction going on than there are workers to do it. So good news is that unemployment's down in the area. If you can swing a hammer, there's no problem getting a job in our market.
Right.
The problem is at $135 a square foot. Now, I'm a multifamily guy. That's what I like to buy as part of my investments, and those are the types of investments I like to sell. At $135 a square foot, I don't see how you can be profitable. I've done the math every 6 way but Sunday. Mm-hmm. You just can't be profitable at that type of acquisition cost. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
The rents have not caught up to that yet, although they are up. They just haven't matched the cost of construction. So these guys are going into basically negative equity situations from new construction, which is kind of scary.
And are these new constructions, when you say multifamily, are we talking apartment complexes, or are we talking like quadplexes, duplexes?
No, we're talking about apartment communities.
Okay. That's what I'm seeing here too. Lots of apartments. The big construction that is happening is tending to be apartments.
Robert, the other thing about that is the tail end of that is we're not talking about your average middle class America type apartments. We're talking about high end communities with the gyms and the everything under the sun. These are the places that are renting in my market a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, not brand new rents for say $1,000 a month. These places are going online at $1,700 a month.
Wow, so almost double the going rate for a similarly appointed unit that may have more luxury accommodations as part of the development.
That's absolutely correct. So when people have a choice of where to go, are they going to stay there or are they going to go somewhere else?
Well, it depends on that profile of debt again, right? I mean, if they're under stresses, people will trim first where they can trim. And we've talked a lot about that on this show as it relates to choices for housing. If you like the tiny house thing, we were talking about tiny houses earlier in the week, and the tiny house thing is basically a myth. People don't want to live in tiny homes. Probably the same number of people who want to live in tiny homes now is the same number of people who wanted to live in tiny homes 30 years ago. The reason that more people make the decision to do a tiny home now is strictly financial, not preferential. So
I would agree.
Yeah, and so when people start thinking things are getting tighter, what decisions do they make? And I think your point is that they're going to move to that less expensive place. And if you've got a choice between that $1,700 place that's, I don't know, 1,000 square foot, 800 square foot, depending on the size,
correct.
1,300,
yep.
and paying $1,700 or getting the exact same unit but without the bigger pool, the spa, and the workout facilities for $1,000. Well, maybe I'll just go with the 1,000 and get a membership for $50 a month at some local gym and get the pool and get the workout and get all that stuff. So that's an interesting dynamic because you're not the first person we've interviewed to mention that. We had another guest on who is doing exactly the kind of developments it sounds like you are seeing, but doing them in Las Vegas, luxury level, less about apartments, month-to-month rentals, and more about a vacation destination thing where it's a shorter-term rental. Now, that might segue us into talking a little bit about how robust the vacation rental market is in Tampa. Is that something that is rocking for you, or in order to really make money at that, do you have to kind of go across the Courtney Campbell Causeway and be really where all the beaches are?
It's a very heavily saturated market. I can tell you that. I have 2 vacation rentals, and we're in the slow season right now for vacation rental. And those units are, I would call them underperforming. However, a few months ago, I was generating $3,000 a month, 2-bedroom, 800 square foot apartment.
Wow. And that's a vacation rental you just do for some like short periods of time.
Correct.
Okay.
I bought the building as a 4-plex, and I bought it as a long-term hold. And I just decided to try out vacation rentals with a part-time tenant, and it worked out quite well. So I converted a second unit, but right at the beginning of the slow season, which probably wasn't I wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
But oops, However, it's, the beaches, every 5 feet, there's a sign for vacation rental. So there's lots to choose from. So
Yeah.
the people that are successful are those that can reach the out-of-state tenant, not necessarily the Airbnb type of thing, but, where they can get them for a little longer duration, less turnover.
Yeah.
I think that there's right now there's too much inventory because you should not be able to get a place on the beach for $50-$60 a night.
Right. Is that really the going rate, 50 or $60 a night?
That's what we're seeing right now in the summertime.
Wow. And how do you find your renters, your guests?
Primarily Airbnb. Now I use a service called Guesty that basically is kind of like the MLS where they syndicate the listing out to.
Okay.
I think it's about 24 different websites, primarily, which is interesting, primarily in Europe. Is where they focus a lot of their concentration listing. There's a lot of Europeans that are traveling from Europe wanting to come to Florida, wanting that great American Florida dream. So they concentrate a lot of their efforts in Florida. And I got to say, demographically, 80% of my tenants lately have been from overseas.
Yeah. Well, the Brits love Florida. I lived in England for a couple of years, and man, all they ever wanted to talk about was Florida. So they seem to understand where Florida is and where Los Angeles is, and then that kind of it trickles off from there. So it's definitely a hot spot for them. Now, obviously, just a side note here, I have a vacation rental myself in Hawaii. I've been using VRBO for that, and literally from the day I listed it on VRBO, I've been rented almost nonstop in terms of being rented 2 to 3 months ahead of time.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so something maybe you might want to check out. I initially resisted. I didn't like the idea of having to pay them money and all this other kind of stuff. But I tell you, once I tried all the other things and focused on that, it just went through the roof in terms of getting that thing rented. So just something to offer up there. And right now, what are your holdings? You mentioned you do have a couple of vacation properties that maybe aren't performing quite where you would like them to be. If you were going to give advice to someone on the right property to jump in Tampa right now, given what you know about the marketplace, what would you suggest? What would you tell them to start?
Number one, beyond the shadow of a doubt, pre-existing, mid-'80s construction, multifamily.
Okay.
You can buy multifamily still in our marketplace if you're working with the right people, and we can grab them before they get snatched up. And we spend a lot of time focusing on what's not for sale and extend. Sure. Compares to what is for sale, but we're picking them up for between $60 to $75 a square foot off market.
Okay,
we're finding them quite competitive. We're looking for problems, the eviction court type of stuff, the mom and pops. Those deals can still be had, and they're still quite ready. We just picked up a fourplex over in Tampa. Paid $50,000 a door for that on a 4-unit building, and it's turning $1,000 a month per unit rent. So
so you just sort of stormed right by an awesome point. You find some of your leads from rent collection court.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and in order to do that, and this is obviously information you could use anywhere, right? This isn't exclusive to Tampa. If you're someone who wants to get into this kind of stuff, and the point that's being made here is this is a technique to use everywhere. In other words, focusing on properties that are not in the MLS. If you're looking on the MLS, you're following every other rat to the same piece of cheese. You need to find the path no one's on to the cheese that no one knows is there. And we've talked about other techniques, but we haven't talked about this one. So do you want to give just a quick intro to that?
I would. I would like to address the MLS if we have time today. Sure. Because I've got a little ninja secret there that the listeners would love as far as the MLS is concerned. But getting back to eviction court, if you're focused on problems and not so much on properties, you're going to do much better, whether you're a broker or you're a buyer, either way. So what I teach people is to go sit in an eviction court, take an afternoon, go sit in eviction court, listen. Number one, it's a great education. You're going to really learn what goes on in the world out there. Second of all, those landlords, when you find the person that is there representing themselves, that's the type of person that you're going to want to go approach. Now, granted, you're not walking up and sliding a business card in their pocket when they're not looking. Go up, commiserate with them, have a conversation, build rapport with them, understand what they're going through, and use that as an opportunity to build a relationship. You're not there to take the lead away and sell them buy their property on the spot.
Right.
However, making that initial contact, I can tell you, when I send my team out there, we just absolutely crush it. It's not even fair. Within a week's time, we usually have a landlord or 2 or 3 on the phone getting ready to turn over one of their buildings to us. Either we're going to list it or we're going to buy it ourselves or put one of our investor buyers on it right away. They're tired, they're worn out, and when they want us to strike when the iron's hot. So that way, I found that to be an incredible way of generating leads.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and a great tip for everywhere. It's not limited just to Tampa. And here's the point: some people right now who are listening are thinking, "Why in the world would I want to buy a problem?" Because in chaos there is profit. Is kind of the byword for that one. But the reality is, if you're a solutions-minded person, that's the value you're bringing to that equation. You're coming in and you're going to solve that problem. So that carries with it a financial benefit. The other benefit is that in a lot of jurisdictions, I don't know if it's true in Tampa, but sometimes you get an opportunity. There's usually a legal window where suddenly it becomes far less complicated on whether or not someone has to leave that property when it changes hands, when it's been bought by a new owner. Is that the case in Tampa, or do you have to still jump through the same hoops the previous owner would have had to jump through?
We still have to honor whatever written agreements are in place with the previous owner. However, what we find is because they're usually so poorly mismanaged, the documents they do have don't hold any legal water, therefore not enforceable. Yeah.
That's something I'm seeing way more lately. I actually had an interesting conversation with someone today. Maybe at some point we can do a show just on that. But owners who take this very bizarre hands-off attitude to their property and really sort of delegate the whole process of management to the tenant, which is bizarre to me. That's something I just don't quite grok. But that's happening in a market here where people are spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for 3-bedroom homes in terms of rent. Wow. And that's, if you are that person who has listened to this show, listened to folks like Tyler, and are managing effectively and are doing really good evaluations of your potential tenants, doing those background checks and owning that process, you're going to turn that property that you've maybe gotten through eviction court into a reliable performer for you because you've done it better than the last guy.
You absolutely will.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we've talked a little bit about the current state of things. You sound like you are a little bit concerned about the direction things are going. If you were trying to take the temperature of the market and figure out where the smartest investments are right now, everything from buying everything you can possibly get your hands on to sell everything you have and keep the cash in a pit with gold and silver and food, with those being being the entire range, if you're projecting for a year, 2, 3, where do you see the market going based on your experience in the Tampa market?
I've been in this market for just shy of 18 years, and it's clear that we are definitely heading for a downturn. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. All the indicators are there. I think that if you're invested in the multifamily space, like I said earlier, the existing multifamily space, I think you're in for a huge payday, because if you're not in those A-class properties, everybody's going to run like, rats from a sinking ship from the A-class properties. They're going to be looking for the B and C-class properties. If you are someone who provides that affordable housing in this market, you're going to do very, very well. Now, one of the problems we've had is that the single family side of things is so overperformed right now, or so overvalued. It's almost impossible to find a property and get into it and still be allowed to for it to cash flow. It just doesn't happen.
Well, you know what? Let's take a quick break right here. But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that as it relates to single-family residentials, because I think a lot of folks out there, that's their preferred investment method. So don't go away. We'll be right back to cover more of that with Tyler Sheff. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852 0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our conversation with Tyler Sheff, investor out of Tampa, Florida. He's not only an entrepreneur and a real estate investor, he's also a licensed real estate agent. And how long did you say you'd been in the Tampa market? 18 years?
Coming up on 18 years now.
Wow. Okay, good. So it's nice to have that kind of ground truth experience where you can look back and see how things have evolved. Now, we were talking a second ago about single family residential homes and the difficulties you're facing there. I'd like to cover that a little bit more. Before we do, though, you also mentioned your multifamily investment strategies in terms of getting those B and C properties because of the downturn you believe is likely around the corner. That's what folks will retreat into. I'm wondering if, like my market, in the last downturn, one of my biggest things when I'm evaluating a marketplace is I love to see how it fared in the last downturn. And rents went up during that time frame. So is that the same story that is told by the data from Tampa, or did you see a different thing kind of happen?
We saw the same story in the multifamily space. The rents increased about 12% over 2 years, so 6% per year.
Wow, that's even higher than what we saw here.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so what about the single family thing? You were just getting started with telling us a little about your single family residential experience there. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, the problem is right now is that the property is being overvalued. People are still being told or under the impression that buying any piece of property is a good investment. Mm-hmm. As long as you put somebody in it, no matter what the rent is and what the acquisition price is or whatever the debt service is, it'll all work out in the wash. And the reality of it is you got people out here paying $150,000, $200,000 for a house that rents for $900 a month. Mm-hmm. That math doesn't work.
Yeah.
That math is never going to work, whether you pay cash for it or not. And we've got too much free cash in the marketplace right now.
Wait, so pay cash? You mean someone who doesn't even have any mortgage debt is going to have a problem?
That's correct. You've got people backing out of Wall Street, so they're pulling these 401ks. They're putting this money into self-directed IRAs. We got money coming from overseas, and obviously there's crisis everywhere in the financial markets overseas. Mm-hmm. So they're coming here with cash. They're bidding up these houses through the ceiling. They're buying these properties, these single-family homes, as rentals, and they're paying above retail prices. They're competing with mom and pop home buyer is who they're competing with. The people that are actually going to move in, the owner occupant, and we're seeing these just crazy prices, $225,000, $900 rent. It doesn't work.
So it doesn't even cash flow with no mortgage to pay? After you've paid insurance, taxes, and all the other miscellaneous stuff, it's not cash flowing after that?
If it does, it's minuscule. I mean, imagine investing $200,000 in a property that rents for $900. Well, now you've got, if you factor in vacancy loss, if you factor in property management, all the other expenses, you're right. In some cases, these things are in the red from day one, from the closing day.
And these people are buying with the intent of it being an investment?
Yes, absolutely, because they're not doing all the math. Pro forma is our most famous word here in Florida. They're skipping management, and they're skipping all of the things that people think, well, I'm going to manage it myself, so I don't have to allow for property management costs.
Right.
Well, that's great until you realize you don't want to be a property manager, and now how are you going to pay for it?
Or that you suck at being a property manager.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you suck at it, it's even worse.
Wow.
And we're seeing a lot of this. And the mentality here, Robert, is they let me buy the house. I won. I got to buy the house. I'm so lucky.
That is nuts. I would have expected this from, say, the Miami area maybe a couple of years ago before the luxury market kind of started to collapse in on itself. But I never would have thought Tampa would go that nuts.
Oh, Tampa has gone way beyond that nuts.
Huh.
They absolutely have. They absolutely have. And it's sad, but the problem is that people are going to get hurt in the process of this. People are going to lose money. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to get lost. Banks are going to get the short end of the stick because they've probably taken a HELOC or somewhere. This money came from somewhere. So wherever this money originated from, it all rolls backwards. It all trickles downhill.
Yeah. We saw the statistics that have been coming in on investing in the United States from overseas was taking a dip for quite a while. Just over the last 2 quarters, it's really ramped up. So whether you're talking about Asia or Europe, suddenly all of those folks want to move cash out of those places and put it into American property. I'm I'm not sure what the big impetus there is. I don't know if it's lack of faith in the value of the currencies they were holding that stuff in overseas, and they want to put it in something they perceive as more stable. But to make that idiotic of an investment is not only amazing, but it really brings home the importance of someone like you needing to develop a strategy that doesn't go to the MLS, right? That goes to off-market properties and finds motivated people who don't even realize that they're quite ready to sell.
I find myself, it's difficult not to talk myself out of sales. I mean, to some degree, I have to eat. I have to be able to sell real estate. But what I find is I encourage people to use leverage. If I have a cash buyer, I basically talk them into, let's talk about the benefits of leverage. My reasoning there is because I have difficulty saying now you can't pay cash because you're too emotional. You're going to overpay.
Yeah.
Please use leverage. That way, at least the appraiser will keep you in check. Your loan officer will say no.
Yeah.
You will be able to stop the madness if you use leverage, because the banks will definitely keep you out of harm's way to some degree, which I could talk about that for hours as well.
So is this overpaying phenomenon also in single family residential? You're seeing it mostly in multi?
We're seeing it on both sides.
Okay. Now you had mentioned something else earlier about some insight you wanted to share relating to the MLS. Do you recall what that was?
Yeah, a little ninja secret I wanted to share with the listeners. Now, people think that there's no deals in the MLS, and to some degree they can be right, but there's no deals anywhere as written. People don't advertise deals. You can't go on Craigslist or Zillow or wherever you find properties listed or advertised,
right.
Broker or no broker. People don't say, please come steal my house. That's not how it works. They always advertise the highest price they possibly think they can get.
Right.
So that said, what we find is, and this has been my little experiment I've done the last 2 years, is properties in the 2 to maybe 6, 7 unit size, it's kind of a gray area. The commercial brokers, it's too small for a commercial broker, okay? And the residential agents are not trained in valuing property by the income method.
Mm-hmm.
All they understand is comparable sales. Well, comparable sales on income property doesn't hunt in an inflated market, especially.
Yeah. It's less emotion and more math.
Absolutely. So what we find is that they are constantly grossly overpricing the properties. Now, most agents, they get frustrated and they turn their head and go, well, this is just ridiculous. I'm not going to even pay attention to this. Well, instead, what I've learned is that if I take the time to reach out to those very same agents, build rapport with them, and I take it from an approach of education without insulting them because they're very easily offended, but putting together an offer that educates. What I do is I add a screen video to that, where I do a video explaining how we arrived at our numbers, how we came up with all the calculations, how we're going to be successful at taking down this deal. Once we do that, we find that, and this just happened the other day on a 6-unit building, the agent emailed me back and said, wow, that was great. I learned so much. Hey, do you mind if I share this with the seller? I said, oh, please do.
Yeah.
Invite me in with the seller. That's great. And that's exactly what they did. And about an hour later, I got a message back from the agent, like, we accepted your offer.
See, now that's awesome too. And what's funny is it was only about 2 months ago that I used YouTube to do a presentation on a property one of my buyers was interested in. I'm an old school guy, right? I've been doing this since '88, and I loved being in a meeting room where I was sitting across from the listing agent and the owners, and we could have a conversation, right? A back and forth.
Yes.
Because people always, even though words have no tone, they will ascribe, even on boilerplate, they will ascribe the worst possible tone to a request for them to pay X, Y, or Z, or to do this or that. So I loved the idea of being able to explain, here's how we got to this. Here's the numbers we looked at. And I finally decided I wanted to try the YouTube thing. I love that you've done that. But it ended up working out great for me, and the listing agent never said anything. But when I finally met the sellers, they were like, the difference between your offer and everyone else's was that video. The fact that you did a video for us and walked us through what you were offering was fantastic. So, and the great part is you can still keep those private, right? On YouTube, you can post a video like that, and the only people who can see it are ones who get the link to it. So anybody else out there, whether you're a real estate agent or an investor, whatever, particularly if you're dealing with absentee owners, this is a great one for folks who are trying to do what you're doing, which is finding the homes that aren't on the market, but you want to maybe approach a owner who's out of state or out of area who may be experiencing landlord fatigue. It's a great way to reach out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what you'll find is, just one little add-on to that is, if you sign up for Wistia, which is a little pricey, so if you're not moving a lot of real estate, sell them a few more houses first. But Wistia costs about $100 a month, and it will actually show you not only who actually opened it. So if you share the link for the video for 3-4 people, it will tell you who watched the video, when they watched it, at what points they paused the video, where they rewound.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
what's
yeah,
the name of the service?
It's called Wistia, Wistia, Wistia.
Okay. That's outstanding. I like that.
Great little service.
Yeah, and there's it sounds like you also kind of apply a little bit of a level of psychology to what you're doing, and I know that in my business I do that as well. When I'm about to present an offer, I realize I'm presenting to two groups. I'm presenting to the agent group and I'm presenting to the owner group, and my goal is always to convert the agent group into advocates for my offer. I want them to be the cheerleaders next to the sellers to encourage them to take my offer. So I will check their history. I'll see how many escrows they've closed in the last year and see how many times they've managed to get over asking price and under asking price, just to see whether or not they have a proven record of fighting for list prices and those types of things. But those are all techniques I think that, again, anybody can use. You don't have to necessarily be a real estate agent. You'd need to have a real estate agent as part of your team to maybe give you that data about a history of an agent you're about to put an offer up against. But I think any good investor out there is going to have somebody who's part of their team that's the real estate person. Do you have any other little up the sleeve things you do? We've talked about a couple of really cool ninja items. Do you have anything else, or have we pretty much revealed all of your deepest, darkest secrets?
Well, I'm sure there's many, many, many secrets that I haven't got to yet, and I probably won't ever make it to in this episode. But I can say one thing to every agent out there, and you kind of nailed it when you just talked about understanding who you're dealing with on the other side. And it just happened this morning. An agent happened yesterday, emailed an offer over at 4:00 in the afternoon to me, hit my inbox as I was walking out the office. My phone never rang all night. And I frankly forgot the offer even came in. I was sitting in my inbox. And about lunchtime, I'm sitting there checking my email at lunch, and I realized, this agent has never even taken the time to pick up the phone to call me to say, did you receive my offer? Why is the seller selling? None of that. They just threw it all over, and they just kind of dumped it on me. It was incomplete. It's so unfortunate that for agents to be successful, we have to work together, and we have to understand each other and why we're doing what we're doing, why the seller is selling, and more importantly, why the buyer is buying. Yeah. And if you take a minute to understand the psychology behind the process, you will be far more successful.
Yeah. That's a whole other show. That's actually how this show got started. I started this show in 2007 as an anonymous thing. The reason why it's Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker was because I never put my real name on it, or at least I didn't for the first 3 years. Right. And it was to specifically vent about that kind of stuff, how most agents really don't even do what I think most of us would consider should be the minimum expected. And absolutely, a phone call to you, an email to you, a text to you, asking a few fundamental questions. I like to ask, because I want to have a piece of paper that everyone wants to sign right then and there. I don't want someone to hesitate because they want to keep the chandelier and that's not mentioned. I don't want a stupid chandelier to give folks more time to create hesitation. So call ahead. Hey, is there anything you'd like me to include in this offer that isn't specifically in the MLS or in any other instructions? Is there some item that would normally be considered real property that you'd like to make sure is treated as personal property and is left? Is there anything, right? Are there pets that aren't going to go with the seller that you'd really like to see placed somewhere? Anything, right? Or even
with you.
Well, and here's the other thing. Once you have a conversation, it opens up the door to almost anything. I've managed to make deals work because I discovered that the husband who lived in the house was a motorcycle geek. And it just so happened one of my buyers was a motorcycle geek and had pieces of Harleys from the 40s. And he had some old knucklehead pieces, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And the thing that swung the deal was a header for a Harley Davidson motor to the seller, to the husband on the seller side. So I think that people overlook immense potential opportunities to make a deal happen by not communicating more. And I don't know why we're so averse to it. I don't know why we've substituted all of this other stuff, this basically automatable stuff, in favor of just doing some smart communicating. It really kind of blows my mind.
Social media has made us non-confrontational now. We exist in a society where everybody's a victim, and people only look and talk to their phone. They don't do anything else besides that.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is at the same time you and I are having this conversation and real estate agents are doing things that way, there are businesses that are literally automating the process of real estate so that agents become unnecessary. And I say, yay.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's more power to you.
I am totally willing to compete against the automated system because right now they've got it, right? How many agents do you know that have quote unquote teams? And each member of that team knows is how to do their one single part. And they don't do anything unique for each property. It's the manufacturing line of real estate where, okay, now this contract needs this inspection. There's the inspection. It's been signed, stamped, done. Well, did the real estate agent read that? Were there any interesting comments? Like, hey, you know what? This looked a little funky. You might want to call an electrical specialist to come in and look at that, right?
Right.
No, they don't.
Exactly. Now, so one little mention I just thought about, we were talking about ninja secrets, is I offer seller financing in almost every one of my listings.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful one.
Yeah. Even if no one takes it.
Right. Yeah. And we don't put a rate out or anything like that. We say, make us an offer. I've put deals together over $3,000 because the buyer was $3,000 short on their closing cost, and they offered it to the seller. They said, will you cover the closing cost? The seller said no. I had advertised seller financing. The buyer's agent, I talked to the buyer's agent. He said, well, how about we just carry this back as a second? Or better yet, I'll go ahead and kick in my fee for that 3%. Okay. Yeah. And I'll carry my commission back as a second mortgage recorded against the deed. Mm-hmm. Your buyer can pay my commission after closing. They went, you can do that? I said, I absolutely can do that.
Yeah.
And I will do that. So not only did I get my fee, I also earned a 7% return on my commission, and I got it over 3 years instead.
Yeah. So, I mean, the moral to the story is think your way through your problems, right?
Yes.
Just stop taking things and assuming you can't do anything about them and get a little bit creative. And one of the common themes, and this is also something that a lot of people think, well, I just don't think like that. Well, you can. It's not something that is impossible to learn. It's just like we've talked about with financial knowledge. It's not that you're born without the gene to understand borrowing and effectively managing your debt. It's just you've never learned. Just like you may have never learned to drive. Once you do, you're fine. It's the same kind of thing. And it's the creativity that you bring to it once you've sort of tapped into that often defines the difference between success and failure for folks, particularly in the world of investing where almost nobody is really thinking their way through, which shocks me.
Correct. How much cash can I throw at this problem?
Yeah. Yeah. And if the thing that here's another, we'll do one more little side thing. I realize I'm sucking up a ton of your time. I like lease options. Simply because if I decide not to exercise the option, I can assign it, right? We had a guest who built her career initially on options. Nobody understands them. Real estate agents kind of panic and run for the hills when you start talking about an option. But once you explain it to a seller, it sounds pretty good to them. And it's so if you embrace that sort of not commonly known thing, at the very least, you inspire some curiosity. So then a conversation continues. And even if they don't accept that, the fact that you've now gotten to a point where you can have a conversation and talk about more than just the option, you can talk about all kinds of things, right, in relation to just the deal. You've gotten yourself a way to figure out more concisely what that seller is really looking for, what they really need in the transaction, ranging from whether it's a price or whether it's other personal stuff that they need as part of the transaction. So always be willing to embrace that stuff is I think the lesson to learn from the way you've handled your business, and I think the way any really successful entrepreneur does.
I couldn't agree more.
Cool. Well, Tyler, I really appreciate all the time you spent with us today. Where can folks find you to maybe hook up with you even? I know one of the things I encourage my folks to do is if they discover a market that they like, particularly Tampa, to go out there, check it out, and hook up with the right kind of people. You definitely qualify as the right kind of people. How can folks find you?
The best way to reach out to us is right through my website. Go to cashflowguys.com, cashflowguys.com. You can text me right through my website. You can call me through there. You can send me an email, carrier pigeon. My podcast is on there, the whole 9 yards.
Excellent. Well, Tyler Sheff, Tampa, Florida, investor, entrepreneur, real estate agent. Thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us. And I hope you have a successful 2017.
Thank you, Robert. Had a great time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.